Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Business Problems Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Crysler. Each episode, we talk to business leaders and subject matter experts to learn about the challenges they've overcome and the challenges they still face. You'll hear fresh insights, real talk, and get inspiration to grow your business. Hey everybody, and thanks for joining me on another solo episode of the Everyday Business Problems Podcast. Today, I want to dive into how to build a process when everyone does it differently. Like so many things that we dive into, I think this is an important topic and one that's been in a lot of conversations lately because getting consensus across multiple people is generally a challenge. And I will hear things like, we need to build in flexibility. Not everybody does things exactly the same way. Things have changed. Those could be input tools, what have you. People try to find shortcuts. I was in a conversation with somebody earlier today about a specific process and how the process was written compared to an observation of how the process was being executed. And wouldn't you know, those two things were done completely different, right? So again, this stuff happens pretty frequently. And one of the things I like to say is it's not so much about making sure everybody does it the exact same way. You can build a bit of flexibility into the process, depending on what that process is and, what the required outcome is, right? So again, a lot of things to unpack with this specific conversation. But what's underneath all of it is wanting to standardize and ensure repeatability, right? So how we get there, what the output is, that is the ultimate goal, is being able to, given a certain set of inputs, is to be able to, with confidence, repeat the output. Okay, so that's the setup for this whole thing. I'm going to break it down into really 5 simple steps from my perspective. And again, the whole goal here is to help standardize across a variety of people that do the thing and define your own best practice within your organization. Sure, there's some benchmarking and things that can be done externally. But again, when it comes to building process, when it comes to standardization, when it comes to the ability to have a repeatable outcome, it's really about defining your own best practices. So how do we start? Let's dive right in. Step number 1, the first thing I like to do is to observe. This I'll say, generally speaking, when I'm talking about things to improve, this is no different. Sometimes we like to skip steps. Again, we are all wired for efficiency. We're always looking for ways to increase efficiency, even when maybe we, shouldn't be seeking efficiency, right? Like, are we effective? Anyway, that's a whole nother story for a different day. Start by observing and not by writing. So, going off of this example from this morning's conversation, this was a process. This happened to be an internal audit, so they're observing this particular process. They had some process documentation, and a couple of the steps were ended up kind of being out of order. Why were they out of order? Well, funny enough, back to the efficiency piece, the way that they were written would have required somebody to put down something they already had in their hand, pick up something completely different, do that thing, and then go back to the thing that they already had in their hand. So what happens? People look for shortcuts, right? People look for efficiency gains. Why should I put this down, pick this thing up? put this thing down, go back, right? So we're wired that way. And the reason that you want to go ahead and observe and ask a lot of questions is to start to unpack these things. Like, do we need to do it this very specific way? Is there a reason? Is there a business case, that maybe the person executing the process, they just don't understand? And why wouldn't they understand it? Maybe they don't have access to the same information that, the leadership folks do, right? So that's how this stuff ends up happening. And then again, you expand out, you have multiple people doing this particular process. Everybody finds a little bit of a different way to do it. Now, this gets into the kind of standardization conversation of, does everybody have to do it exactly the same way? Is there any room to, manipulate these steps? I ask, what's the desired outcome, right? Like, what's the output we're after? Is this order of events, this sequence, is it critical to some other part of the business that somebody doesn't know, right? So all of these are things that you should be thinking through, having conversations with. So again, as you are observing, you're not writing things down. You can jot notes down for sure. But what I mean is, don't skip ahead to step number 2, which is map it out, right? But go ahead, observe, ask lots of questions, ask people why they are doing what they are doing. Why did you do this versus doing that? It's written this way. Why did you jump over to this step? And just listen to what the feedback is. How did you know to do that? What do you do when this thing happens? What do you do if you can't find that tool? What do you do in this other type of situation, right? Constantly asking open-ended questions, really listening to the answer, jotting yourself some notes down about what those answers are. That is going to help inform step 2, which I already mentioned, being the map it out. So again, don't rush this process, because ultimately the more people that do the more people that are executing a particular process, the more well-rounded set of information you're going to have to start doing the rest of these steps. Okay, so we don't want to rush this particular process of building standardization. All right, so that's step number 1. We want to observe. We want to ask lots of questions. We want to take down some notes. Step number 2 is all about mapping it out. Again, a couple of different schools of thought with this. If you're a smaller organization or it's kind of a very well-defined process, I don't think there's anything wrong with, as the observer, mapping it out, kind of taking your stab at what you heard, what you witnessed, and the notes that you take to go ahead and just make, a V1, right? Version 1, a messy draft, however you want to call this thing, but documenting what you believe the process to be, right? What you believe based on your observation and conversation to have captured what those steps are. How do you do it? Again, this is simple stuff. So pen and paper, sticky notes, blank wall. If you have a whiteboard available, use that. If you love, being on the computer and you want to do it in a program, use, some sort of flow charting software. Lucid, Visio, there's a whole ton of them, okay? The whole point is to make this, easy barrier to entry and to make sure that it gets captured. All right, so that's step 2. Step number 3 is obviously bringing the team together. And again, you can do this in a variety of ways depending on what your specific scenario is. The whole goal here, though, is to, 1, qualify what you have observed, what you have mapped out, and then ask, like, what did I miss? What are some things that maybe I didn't write down or that you've recognized as being critical to this as the operators, as the folks that, have been going through this process. So you can, again, get that documented and then start to look for some, commonalities or discrepancies of, who's doing what and when. And then again, ultimately, so you are creating consensus across the folks that do this particular process, and more importantly, like what's the goal, what's the outcome that we're after, right? So consensus tends to be the reason that we don't have like these often, right? Like I'm not saying nobody, but oftentimes we don't have our own best practices defined. And even if you do, you have SOP, standard operating procedure, you have a work instruction, something like that. Oftentimes things change. Again, people find shortcuts. People, inputs change, right? And we very rarely treat these documents as living, which means that chances are that documentation is outdated and no longer applicable. If it is applicable, people have, again, found different ways to kind of move around the predefined process. Okay, so consensus brings us back to the whole main point, which again is to what's the goal, right? What's the outcome that we're after? And then based on those things, we can start to say like what leaves room for flexibility and what has to be done in this very specific order. The other thing I would say about the flexibility is if there is an opportunity to build in flexibility, then there's no need to get to the nth degree of detail, right? Using this example from earlier today, if it doesn't matter which step goes in front of the other one, if there's no business case to do it one way versus the other day, we can use more outcome-based language, right? So it's like this, in this case, it was about measuring particular ingredients and the order in with which they measured them. So instead of specifying the order from a work instructions or a SOP perspective, they could have just used outcome-based language. Ensure all raw materials are measured accurately, right? Something more outcome-based in terms of language for the specific work instruction or SOP would have sufficed. It doesn't matter if they do one versus the other, right? So be thinking about that in terms of how you can build in some flexibility for people. And again, I think this is where a lot of there's some differing opinions, especially from a thought leadership perspective and also like from just a general leading people perspective, right? Like, on the one hand, it's, we have to document every single touch, every single step point or step in the process. I agree to a certain degree, right? If that particular detail has no material impact on the outcome, and you've not recognized it as a means to be effective for this particular process, then we don't have to go to that nth degree, right? So you really have to be thinking about this stuff from that kind of perspective to make sure that you're kind of sufficing or balancing, all different aspects of this. So once consensus has been reached, obviously we can continue to, iterate on this. We can continue to implement supporting elements, capturing kind of the most critical parts, but then, can we record a video of somebody doing this? Can we create pictograms or pictures or checklists, right? All those supporting elements that kind of go towards a more consistent execution, all of those big fan of, right? They all work in a variety of kind of effectiveness depending on what's the specifics of the particular process, right? So again, you don't have to go to the nth degree, but you may find it useful. There may be some consensus with the team that, hey, let's develop up just a key touch point checklist, right? And that's going to help to ensure that we have a more repeatable outcome in the future. Okay. Step 4 is all about testing. And I've shared this story and lesson a bunch of different times, but, it's something that gets overlooked often and gets kind of accepted as like, well, of course, whatever it is that we just changed is going to improve and or prevent, this thing from recurring, right? Reality is that most of it ends up being lip service. We don't actually go out and proactively test any of this stuff. So in the future, when something similar happens, we kind of go on this same, cycle. It's like, there was a problem with X. What happened? Dave didn't follow the process. Why not? Dave wasn't trained. Oh, let's pull the training documents. Oh, it turns out Dave was trained, on this date and it was recorded, right? So now where do we go from here? What's the actual root cause of that? Well, maybe we should just do more retraining. It's like, well, that's a possibility, but what are some other things that we could maybe look at doing? Is there some other way to improve the process or the overall system to ensure that the outcome we're seeking is attained, right? So like proactively testing those things. Can we go out and can we verify that Dave knows what to do in this particular, set of circumstances? We could just ask that question. Hey, Dave, what do you do when X happens? Oh, well, I do this, and do this. How did you know that's what to do? Oh, I remember, Joe trained me on that a couple of months back. And yeah, I haven't really seen that issue yet, but, I know exactly what we need to do. Great. That's a proactive test. We're testing to ensure that, what we've done previously is going to yield us, the desired outcome, right? Amazing. Step number 5 is all about the, again, continuous improvement loop. You can do this in a variety of ways, but back to the testing, back to the auditing, just because we've gone through, we've gotten consensus, we've identified best practices, we've now documented it, we've created all of the supporting, tool set, documentation, what have you. Now what, right? 3 months goes by, 18 months goes by. Are we still doing it that same way? Get out there, test, audit, ask questions, re-observe, right? Get this stuff into a loop. As it came up in a different conversation earlier today, this stuff is never ending. If you're treating this as a means to improve your business, to improve not just the financial metrics, but the culture, the folks that are within your operation. If you're treating these opportunities as kind of living, breathing documents, as ways to coach through situations that come up, I guarantee that your financial results will improve, your company culture will improve, finding, attracting and retaining top talent, that stuff improves, right? Like, because people are attracted to companies that do this stuff. Why do not many companies do this stuff? Because it's hard and there's a lot of nuance to it. And it beyond being hard and there being nuance to it, it takes time, right? It takes time and energy and effort and focus and all of those things. And so oftentimes, right, in kind of the everyday fire, this stuff goes by the wayside. So that's why, though, you've got companies that are in, a variety of economies, booming, growing, crushing it. And you've got companies that are struggling. They're struggling to find people. They're struggling to, get out and market their products. They're struggling to attract revenue, right? And then they struggle to deliver on it. Again, all of these are ultimately symptoms of those issues. So, going and addressing that and dealing with it, getting some infrastructure in place, and working through this with your team, bringing people together, again, is going to go a really long way to improving your business and improving the customer experience and internally for your team as well. So, as always, as a reminder, our solo episodes are an extension of our free weekly newsletter, Business System Saturday. So if you haven't signed up for that, I'd highly encourage you to go to the website, check that out. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening today. If we brought you any value, please rate, subscribe, and share our podcast. Also, be sure to connect with us on social media by searching @The Crysler Club. Until next week, I'm your host, Dave Crysler.